Welcome to Aging Well with your co-host Alice Liu. Today we have a very special guest, Dr. Nicole Anderson. Welcome to the show, Dr. Anderson.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be here as well. Firstly, can you introduce yourself in your own words?
Sure. I'm Nicole Anderston. I'm a scientist focused on healthy cognitive aging and pathological aging, so mild cognitive impairments and dementia, with a primary focus on helping to prevent cognitive decline and dementia. So this is the Kimel Family Centre for Brain Health and Wellness. It's the world's first research-driven community center delivering personalized dementia risk reduction programming. So people come in and get a very comprehensive assessment of their dementia risk, both non-modifiable dementia risk factors, things like genetics that you can't change, but really focusing on the modifiable dementia risk factors. So lifestyle behaviors that research has shown really influence our likelihood of developing dementia. And then based on their assessment, they get a personalized program strategy telling them what kinds of programs they should enroll in order to help reduce their dementia risk. And that comes in 5 different kinds. So that's in terms of physical activity, brain healthy eating, cognitive engagement, social connections, and mental well-being.
How can people become a member here?
They can go onto our website. So just Google Kimel Centre and you'll find the website, and there's just a button there to join the wait list. We do have over 200 people on the wait list, so it's very popular.
So what first drew you to the field of neuropsychology and aging, and what motivated you to focus your research on memory and mild cognitive impairment in older adults?
So it's kind of a long story. I was 5 years old, and I remember doing kind of mini experiments with my older brother, trying to get him to behave a different way or to not tickle me or torture me. So I was like doing cognitive psychology experiments as a 5-year-old. And so I knew from that age I wanted to study cognition. And then in terms of aging, after I finished my undergrad, I took a job as a research assistant, and it happened to be a cognitive aging lab. And I fell in love with the field, just absolutely loved it. And so I knew when I went to graduate school, I wanted to continue focusing on that. And I ended up in Toronto for graduate school and at the Rotman Research Institute as a scientist. And early on as a scientist, colleagues and I, Dr. Angela Troyer and Kelly Murphy, we started up a educational program for people living with mild cognitive impairments. And so we designed the program, and then we validated it, that it works, that people learn how to use memory strategies that are effective, that make their memory function better. And now that program, it's called Learning the Ropes for Living with Mild Cognitive Impairment. It's offered across Canada and in the US and Australia. So,
what can you tell us about the relationship between cognitive function like memory and aging?
Yeah, so a lot of our cognitive functions change as we age as a part of normal healthy aging. So our memory does get a little bit worse, our attention gets a little bit worse, what's called working memory, so holding information in mind and working with it as you're going along. So like mental arithmetic is a great example of that. That gets a bit worse. We get slower as we age in terms of our processing speed. But other things don't change, or they keep getting better as we age. So our fluency with the language or our vocabulary doesn't change at all as we age. And so in terms of mild cognitive impairment and dementia, it's just that compared to what happens with normal healthy aging, it's just a bit worse. So memory declines more than we would expect due to normal healthy aging, and problem solving does, etc. So, yeah.
And then in terms of mild cognitive impairment, how does that differ from normal aging versus dementia?
Yeah, so it's the kind of, it's called the transitional stage between healthy aging and dementia. So people are having mild cognitive impairments. So they're having cognitive impairment that's greater than we would expect due to healthy aging, but it's not significant enough yet to interfere with everyday functioning. So people can continue to work, continue to do their finances, their meal planning, things like that. And then the transition from mild cognitive impairment to dementia is when people are no longer independent, so that they do have difficulty with their finances and their meal planning and things like that.
Okay, very interesting. What kind of interventions can be used to promote brain health and reduce dementia or cognitive impairment risk?
There's a lot. So the most recent Lancet report identified 14 different factors that collectively account for 45% of dementia cases worldwide, which is pretty remarkable, saying that nearly half of dementia risk is due to lifestyle or modifiable factors. And it starts with, it's also a lifespan phenomena. So the amount of formal education you get as a child predicts dementia risk. So people who have less formal education are at higher risk. And then in midlife, we get into a lot of the metabolic factors, such as high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes, sensory functioning too. A lot of people don't realize, but having a hearing impairment or vision impairment without correction increases risk of dementia. And then the more lifestyle things. So physical activity is very important. One of the biggest risk factors, not getting enough exercise. We also know, even though it's not in the model, but brain healthy eating is important, and staying cognitively engaged and socially connected are also important.
Out of all of these different types of interventions, including the lifestyle changes you mentioned, what would you say is the most important in your opinion or the most promising?
I would say physical exercise. It seems to have the biggest bang for its buck. And it's doing so through a number of mechanisms that we know that it has benefits for, your weight, for your blood pressure, for your blood sugars. It decreases depression and anxiety and stress. People sleep better if they exercise during the day. So it's doing a whole bunch of things. And actually, you're growing new neurons when you exercise with aerobic activity, which is pretty cool. That by aerobic exercise, new neurons are born in the hippocampus, which is important for memory, and then spread out to the rest of the brain to be functional.
So I also know that you study cognitive aging across different populations. In terms of, for example, exercise, how would you say, depending on the age population, how does that differ? Like, what does that look like?
It doesn't look any different. So the Canadian guidelines are 150 minutes a week, kind of regardless of your age in adulthood. And I think we tend to think that older adults can't do that, but they can. They can do 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous activity a week. And then you mentioned different populations. I also firmly believe that how you do that doesn't matter as long as it's moderate to vigorous. So it could be traditional forms of dance, or it could be aerobics or whatever. So everybody can exercise in the way that suits them and benefit from it.
That's really great to hear. Yeah. So basically, we're saying that older adults, they can train their brains basically to stay a little sharper. How much of memory loss would you say is preventable?
Some of it is going to happen with healthy aging. I'm getting up there myself, and I notice changes. But I think what's preventable is it deviating from that normal healthy aging decline in memory into mild cognitive impairment and dementia. That's not entirely preventable, but to a large extent preventable.
It's good to know that we can do something about it, right?
Exactly.
So what role would you say that social connections and community can play in brain health as well?
Yeah, that's also another very important point. And it's not so much how many people you're connected with, but how you feel from those connections. So we did a review of the literature and found that instead of your social network size, what matters more is, do you feel lonely? So some people can know a lot of people but still feel lonely, and other people can just have a couple of friends and feel completely content. So it's more important to try to stay connected and not feel that loneliness and have that social support.
Right, so it's more based on our perception.
Yes.
And then speaking of that, would you then say that there is also a difference in terms of, for example, if there are negative or toxic interactions that you have with people?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, because that's going to increase stress, and stress is very toxic to the brain. It increases cortisol, which specifically attacks the hippocampus that we need for memory. So yeah, toxic relationships should be dealt with. Yeah.
So it's important that we maintain healthy, positive interactions.
Yeah.
What are some early warning signs that loved ones should watch out for regarding cognitive changes?
Yeah, so as I've mentioned a few times, that memory does decline as we get older as part of normal healthy aging. But the signs of where it might be tipping into mild cognitive impairment, there's two real top ones. One is repeating the same question within a single conversation. So asking the same question and then a few minutes later asking it again. And the second one is getting lost or disoriented in a place that you used to be really familiar with. So going to the same community center or the same grocery store that you've gone to a gazillion times, but getting disoriented on your way there. Those are two very early signs that things might not be just normal healthy aging.
If you see these signs, what would you say the first thing you should do is?
Speak to your family doctor and try to get a referral to a neurologist so that you can get a neuropsychological assessment.
Okay, perfect. Can you also speak to the challenges or opportunities of using technology to support cognitive health in older adults?
Yeah. So, a lot of people think that using technology or even just a notebook or whatever is they're not using their brain if they do that.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll say like, I don't want to write it down, or I don't want to record it in my phone or what have you, because then I'm not using my brain. But the evidence shows that you will actually remember it better if you do that. Which, as a memory researcher, that makes a ton of sense, because we know that the more way you get information in, the stronger the memory is. So if you do record it on your phone or write it down in a notebook, then you not only have the little voice in your head saying, I need to remember to do X, but you also have the visual inputs or a bit of manual input even from entering it onto your phone.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And it's great that technology is getting so much better as well. So lots
Yeah.
of great hopes.
Yeah.
How would you say that, so we've already talked a little bit of stress. How would you say that stress, especially chronic stress, specifically impacts memory over time?
Yeah, there's a lot of evidence that it affects memory, it affects processing speed and attention. And again, it's largely due to the chronic elevation of cortisol levels. So that kind of stress response in the brain. And also it's again, the perceived stress,
Right.
So some people can manage very stressful events and not feel stressed. So it's more the subjective perception of what's going on too. So something that you might think would be really stressful for somebody, it might not be for that person. And likewise, things that you would think wouldn't stress somebody out might stress somebody out. So it's really what somebody feels. If they feel stress, then that should be addressed.
Yeah, I think that's really important to hear actually, because sometimes you want to help your loved ones and say you shouldn't do something that you would consider stressful, but maybe to them it would help.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So would you say there is such thing as too late when it comes to improving brain health?
Absolutely not. No way. It's never too late. So we have people here in the Kimel Family Centre for Brain Health and Wellness that we start at 50, so people have to be 50 or older to be a member, but our oldest member is 95. And we don't have an upper cutoff because it's never too late. The benefits of physical activity, of cognitive engagement, brain healthy eating, social connections, and mental well-being are the same regardless of your age.
And can you tell us a little bit more about the Kimel Center and what you're doing here?
Yeah. So we are the world's first research-driven community center focused on personalized dementia risk reduction program. So it is a research study housed in a community center where people age 50 and over come in and get a very comprehensive dementia risk assessment, looking at almost all known dementia risk factors, and there's many of them. So that includes a clinical assessment, that includes a bunch of questionnaires. People give blood for blood biomarkers of risk, so primarily like elevated glucose or inflammatory markers, and they give a saliva sample for their genetic risk of dementia. And then as soon as that assessment is done, they get a personalized dementia risk report and program strategy, outlining any kind of conditions that they have that could be increasing their dementia risk. So I mentioned hearing loss, for example, or high blood pressure. So if they're not already addressing those, we encourage them to do so, as well as their risk in modifiable domains. So their risk in terms of physical activity, brain healthy eating, cognitive engagement, social connections, and mental well-being. And so then, based on their risk report, they sign up for programs here at the center that address their risk. So we have a program guide that looks just like any other community center program guide, with the one difference being that each program is tagged with 2 or more of those risk factors. So they basically take their risk report and the program guide and say, I need to address this factor, say cognitive engagement. So they look through all the programs that address cognitive engagement and pick something that they want to do. And every 6 months, they reassess, get an updated report. So they're always focused on their specific current risk factors.
That's absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
How did this amazing project get started?
Yeah, it was the vision of the Kimel family and our CEO of Baycrest. And then we recruited Dr. Howard Churko from McGill to come join us to help lead this too, along with me. And then it was a couple years of planning of what do we really want this to look like before we landed on this model.
Yeah, you're still fairly new, right? So what do you envision for the future?
So a couple things. One, we're aiming to have 1,800 people as members here by August of 2027. We just went over 400 people. As I mentioned before the interview, we opened up a little more than 400 people. As I mentioned before the interview, we opened up a little more than a year ago. And then once we validate it and show that we are reducing risk and we're improving cognition, to scale it out to the rest of Canada. Because there are seniors community centers across Canada, and there's no reason why they couldn't also be delivering more personalized brain health programming. They're already offering the programs, because the programs that we offer here are no different from any other community center. But if they do it in terms of people's specific personal risk factors, it should have much more bang for the buck.
Yeah, for sure. That's really exciting. Yeah. And then more in general as well, how has the field of gerontology evolved since you began your career?
Yeah, the biggest thing is that for dementia, up until a couple of years ago, there was no cure or treatment, and that's changed radically, and it's going to continue to change. So currently there are medications approved in the United States that treat Alzheimer's. They're not approved yet in Canada, and partly for good reason. There's a lot of complexity. They're very expensive. You have to have an MRI, and we don't have MRIs all over the country, etc. But it's the first time that there's hope, that we're developing treatments to actually treat dementia and cure people.
That's really, really amazing. Yeah. How have your views on aging changed personally as you've continued to work on this field, because things have changed so much?
I don't think so, really. I've always had a very positive view on aging, and I don't even mind my own aging, even though my birthday is next week, and I hate what the number is. But I think working with older adults throughout my career has shown me just how amazing they are and how much they've accomplished and can carry that through into later age. So I think I've maintained that positive view of aging throughout my career.
Yeah, that's great. And I mean, when it comes to birthdays, that's also more of a societal thing as well, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's really great to hear. I mean, speaking of your own aging journey, which we're all on, can you tell us more about what that's been like for you and how you deal with it?
So I do exercise a lot. So I play soccer 3 times a week. I work out with a trainer once a week. Try to go for runs in between. I ski in the winter. I try to eat in a brain healthy way. I'm vegetarian. I have been for 30 years. Nothing against meat for other people, but that does promote a little bit more brain healthy eating. Try to stay socially connected. My job gives me a ton of cognitive engagement for sure. So yeah, I try to practice what I preach, because I don't think I should be telling people what they should do if I'm not doing it myself.
Absolutely. Yeah. What role do public health or government policies play in supporting cognitive aging?
That's a great question. That definitely we need to get more support from government and public policy to have more age-friendly cities. That's kind of a growing trend, but it's not had the uptake that it should have, so that older adults can get around and get to places and remain active. The community centers, if we do validate this and show that it's beneficial, and our preliminary results show that it is. So within the first 6 months of engagement, dementia risk is going down and cognition is improving. But on a bigger scale, if we can show that that's the case, then having community centers across Canada adopt this kind of approach would be very important. We have a national dementia strategy, but I think we can do a lot more in Canada in terms of really reinforcing that and focusing on all stages, on prevention, on early detection, on treatments and care. So focusing on the whole journey.
People have mild cognitive impairment. What are the chances that they are able to improve of that?
Yeah, so it's really variable, and it depends on a lot of factors, but some people who are diagnosed with mild cognitive impairment later will be deemed to be in good cognitive health. So there's about 30% of people will go back to being in good cognitive health. And that's because a lot of different conditions can cause mild cognitive impairment, can cause cognitive issues that have nothing to do with dementia. So once something else is treated and identified, then their cognition can improve. Among the rest, odds are it's going to develop into dementia, but everything that we're doing here in the Kimel Centre, where people can do at home, will help to slow that progression down and keep people in better brain health for longer. So again, the physical activity, the cognitive connection, social engagement, that will help slow that progression into dementia down.
I mean, it sounds like there's a lot of hope in this field for the future, so it's really, really exciting to hear. What is one final message you would want to leave with our audience today?
I think it's that a very large percentage of our brain health is in our hands, that we can do something about it. And people think, well, my father had it or my aunt had it, that means I'm going to get it, I'm due. And that's not the case. Lifestyle matters more than genetics. And so, I hope that inspires people to pick up on their exercise, to eat a little bit more healthfully, to stay connected, do cognitively engaging things, treat any mental health issues, etc.
Yes, I really think that's so incredibly important to hear. And also the fact that it really is just never too late, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, now we've reached the end of our time. Thank you so much for taking the time to have this incredibly educational conversation with us.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah. Well, this has been Aging Well with your co-host Alice Liu and our amazing guest, Dr. Anderston. May we be young forever.
So this is our clinical assessment room. So in here we measure people's height and weight, their blood pressure. We have an ultrasound machine where we measure the quality of the quadricep muscle because frailty is a big risk factor for dementia. So the more muscle mass one has, the lower likelihood they are to develop dementia. We measure hearing and vision, olfaction or sense of smell, and we measure grip strength and cognition in this room. In here we're set up to test VO2 max, which is the gold standard of fitness. It's looking at the amount of oxygen you take in versus what you're breathing out. Because of our population, we're not doing VO2 max because you're literally maxing people out when you do that. And we don't want to risk of a cardiac event like a heart attack. And so we're doing what's called VO2 submax, so bringing people up to 70% of their maximal heart rate and measuring that. And then also measuring anaerobic fitness through this hand ergometer. So people just pedal with their hands as fast as they can for 30 seconds. And that gets at anaerobic fitness. So this is a gait mat. It's a 16-foot gait mat with thousands and thousands of sensors in it. And so we have people walk up and down it at their usual pace, both alone and then again while they're coming backwards from 100 by sevens. And it turns out that the more you slow down when you're walking while thinking, that's a risk factor for dementia. So if you can think and walk at the same pace, you're in good shape. But if you have to slow down your walk to be able to think, then that's been shown to be a risk factor for dementia.
Okay.
Yeah.
So can you also assess for risk?
It can do that too. So it can tell you about the balance between your legs and the symmetry of your stride as well. So it can give indicators of false risk as well.
Okay, thank you.
This is our warm water, salt water, shallow pool that's used primarily for aquafit. But some people do lanes in here as well.
Wow. What kind of classes over here in the pool?
So we do a lot of aquafit classes in here. So imagine aerobics, but in the pool, and the resistance of the water makes it more effortful than the air does.
Thank you.